Hello and welcome back to the only live Monday through Friday lacrosse talk show on the planet. You are watching Daily Dive. It is Wednesday, February the 19th, 2025. I am your host, Michael Carvelis in Guyton, Georgia. We are live on 12 on Sports via YouTube, Roku, and Fire TV. Subscribe to the 12 on Sports channel on YouTube for other great shows and live sports. On today's awesome show, is it time to respect the Saskatchewan Rush? I think it's time for me to take a stand. Guest Cooper Perkins joins the show to talk all things San Diego Seals, his new NLL box out with Mackie Jenner, and of course, more than that. And we'll wrap it up with my NLL power rankings. Has Calgary and Halifax moved up enough for fans to like it? We'll let you know. We want to first let you know this show is presented by tickets.12ouncesports.com. That's tickets.numbers12lettersozsports.com. Get your NLL tickets for less by going to that website, which also includes every sport, including even the PLL, and all your favorite artist concerts. Not to mention Broadway and theater. Tickets.12ouncesports.com. Without further ado, it is now time to get into a segment. Hey, is it time to respect the Rush? And I couldn't fit the entire team on the graphic, nor did I have time to, but there's a reason I added the characters that I did. Because, folks, I'm going to be honest, I always think back to a time where GM / co-head coach, I think, Derek Keenan, Ryan's father, I believe, Derek Keenan said after like a couple of down years in Saskatchewan, he put out a statement that said, I need you to trust me one more time. So Derek Keenan goes out and they trademark Matthews. It looks like it's grim. They get guys like Jake Boudreau. And then I believe they traded for Zach Mans. And then the dispersal draft happens. And you're like, okay, well we bring in Matt Hosick, whatever. Draft guys like Jake Naso, Brock Haley, Levi Anderson. Add Frank Scigliano. But you keep Robert Church, Mike Messenger, and a few others. And at the time, it seemed like a bunch of moving parts, and you're like wondering, can this team get it done? Is Jimmy Quinlan the answer at head coach? And then it all came to me, not just watching them start the season 8-2 and be the first teams to 8 wins, but it was watching NLL box out with Mackie and Coop. Austin Shanks too. Shout out MJG79 on YouTube with the comment. But when I was watching this episode earlier today, they were talking about the Rush and how Matt Hosick kind of fell into their, like Mackie called it one of the, like I forgot what terminology she used, but like one of the best picks of the dispersal draft, basically, when Panther City folded, obviously. And Matt Hosick was not a huge name, but here's the thing the Rush already had. Some good young players like Brock Haley, Austin Shanks, Levi Anderson, even Jake Naso. They have Frank Scigliano, the goalie. They have the goal scorers like Robert Church and Ryan Keenan. They have the veteran like Mike Messenger. And it's all coming together. What were they missing? Did they need a Will Malcolm, as I believe Mackie brought out on the NLL box out? Because that's what Colorado did. Even Las Vegas, instead of getting Nick Damude, they decided to draft Jonathan Donville. And how's that working out for them? Granted, they're a lot farther away than just the goalie, but you get it. The Rush got their Paul Dawson. Remember I told you guys that including the playoffs, ever since the Buffalo Bandits have acquired Paul Dawson last season, they are 17-2. And were, I believe, 16-0 or 16-1 prior to this weekend. It was just a glue guy to bring the back end together. A model of consistency. A hard worker, a guy who's going to come in there and be the ultimate professional and winner. That's what it took. And it pushed together a machine, a green machine that needed our attention. And for weeks, I mean, yeah, I had the Rush up there. I've always been a closet Rush fan, but like, I've always wondered where I felt like, why do I think this team is so good? They're so complete. And I feel like the same way I do with Calgary, maybe a lot of fans are not even showing the respect to the Rush that they deserve. You hear about Buffalo, you hear about Toronto's injuries, we hear more about Albany, and maybe rightfully so, but it's like the Rush have been right there. They're the first team to 8 wins, 10 weeks into the season, or 12 weeks technically. They've always been right there. The complete team. Are they the most complete team besides the Buffalo Bandits? You could make an argument. After all, the Toronto Rock cannot get by the Buffalo Bandits, so I don't even want to hear about them. It's just impressive what Derek Keenan and this crew has built together. Shout out Mike Messenger and Robert Church for sticking it out. Shout out Frank Scigliano for continuing to defy the odds despite his playoff woes in recent memory. Shout out to the rookies. And shout out to Zach Mans and Ryan Keenan and others who are holding down the fort. It's just impressive how complete this team is. And with expectations, very high expectations, comes now high responsibility. Now, as the Rush move on in their season, I want to see them continue to get better every week. I want to see them continue to maybe not run it up on teams, but control games like they did this weekend. Or are they going to be the Rush of old or in recent memory? Let's hope, for the sake of the league and for the sake of this team and for the sake of the city of Saskatchewan, that they are going to be fine. I'm saying that they look complete. I think, like I said, it's time to respect them, but I'm also curious to see how it unfolds. When we come back to this awesome show, we're going to bring in Cooper Perkins, who wears quite the many hats nowadays, including Seals play-by-play, among other things. Don't go anywhere. I know you won't.
Don't go anywhere. Daily Dive will be right back.
Need tickets to that next event? Well, at 12 Ounce Sports, we've got them with soccer anywhere in the world. Tickets to any venue, any sport. Want to go to NCAA or NFL football matches? We've got them.
Yeah.
Baseball at every level. Every Power 5 matchup is available. Don't forget, costumes and paint are optional. What's that? You want to go to Broadway? We have those too. Want to jam out? Every concert, every artist. That's right, at 12 Ounce Sports, we've got the tickets for less. 12ozsports.com/tickets. That's 12ouncesports.com/tickets.
Welcome to MyBookie. You're ready to create an account and start making money, and we're here to help. And remember, you can get a bonus of up to $1,000 on your first deposit. Now you're ready to bet. Just go to mybookie.ag, visit the sportsbook, click on your bet, and input the amount you want to risk or win in the bet slip. Yes, it's that easy. Just remember, at MyBookie, you play, you win, you get paid.
America, get back on track with Dust Pods Performance Stabilizer. When applied to roadways, it kills dust and strengthens the integrity of the road. easily applied by mixing with water. Dust Pods is the future in polymer stabilization. Call 1-833-DUST-PODS or visit dustpods.com today.
Daily Dive is back in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Daily Dive. He is Cooper Perkins. How have you been, sir?
I've been good, Mike. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. I had to make you a new graphic there. I had to believe in USC thing for you. Is that in the off season, by the way, that podcast you do? Believe in USC?
Yeah, we're going through some changes with co-hosting duties, so it's kind of on hiatus right now, but it'll be back at some point here.
Good thing the NLL box out filled the void, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I got to ask you first about that because that's the new thing. I just watched today's episode. Good job with you and Mackie, by the way. How has it been? I know you kind of teased it very subtly last time you were here, but how has it been doing that this season now that's airing?
It's been cool. It was a slow process of getting it off the ground. It took some time, took a while. A lot of work went into it behind the scenes, but finally we're able to get it launched. Maybe a month or so later than we originally had hoped and planned, but there's a lot of moving parts with stuff like that. So, but now that it's live, we're happy about it. I hope the second episode had a little bit less Super Bowl talk for you. You seemed awfully heated about that last week, but no, it's good. Mackie's awesome, and it's entertaining having someone to talk lacrosse with that's got a different perspective and comes from a different background. So it's been really enjoyable in addition to hopefully being a good product.
How cool is? I mean, obviously you've probably dealt with Messi Berg more than others have because you're the play-by-play for the Seals. But how cool is it having him on after back-to-back winning goals? By the way, by that guy.
Yeah, he's just a beauty of a guy. Anytime you get a chance to talk with Wes, it's always entertaining and fun. He's one of those people where there's always a story kind of waiting to happen. He's just kind of an eclectic, unique one-of-one character. And so, the play on the floor is obviously great and inspiring and fun. But him, being away from the floor is probably what's most entertaining. So hopefully we're able to draw a little bit of that out in those interviews. I know we were able to, for sure, with Jake Withers and with Wes to some extent as well, because that ultimately is the goal of the show, to be, a little bit less lacrosse-centric in that aspect and a little bit more personality-centric. We want people to get to know people, want them to get to know us and get to know players. So, there are just places to go if you want, really in the weeds, nuts and bolts lacrosse stuff every week. That's not what we're really trying to do. We're trying to be a little bit more personality driven with that. And so, with Wes specifically, he's just a great, early guest to have on the show. The familiarity obviously doesn't hurt. But he's just such an entertaining person that, he gives thoughtful responses to questions that are not necessarily long-winded, which is kind of funny. He just says a lot with not a lot of words. And so that usually makes for a pretty entertaining interview.
It makes for like a good captain too. So let's talk about the San Diego Seals, because I know you weren't in Buffalo for that game, but my goodness, man, for them to weather that storm of a comeback, how impressive was that to you, seeing the team up close as you do? He talked about the lineup changes too earlier in the season. That's always something that I had not really looked at before. But how amazing was it to see back to back? We say weathered a big storm.
Yeah, I think that the resilience is never something that's going to be in short supply, given the coaching staff and the individuals in the dressing room. But kind of the bigger takeaway is just that there's an identity now offensively. There was a big kind of talking point going into that game against Saskatchewan 3 weeks ago about, kind of being too unselfish at times and a little bit too content to move the ball and look for better opportunities. And the process of that resulted in kind of passing up on a lot of shots and running out of time on the shot clock. And so, Wesley specifically really, took charge the last couple of weeks. And, it's also not a coincidence that Zach Currier has played a little bit more offensively. I think that he's the dark horse MVP candidate in the NLL right now, that if they end up winning 10 or 11 games, which is, not going to be easy, right? You're 5-5. That's a pretty big climb. But if they end up winning 10 or 11 games, I think you have to consider the full value of a player. I mean, he leads the team in loose balls, caused turnovers, block shots, and he's also scoring hat tricks against Buffalo and
Oh,
being the most impactful player on the floor pretty much every time he plays. So, there are guys who are going to probably set records this year, but I don't think that what he's doing should get lost in the shuffle, because what he does every game is cram 3 players' stat lines into one. And he just does it every week. So no one really pays attention or bats an eye. We just go, oh yeah, that's a courier. But he is such an impactful guy. They'd love to have Ryan Benesh back, and he's been dealing with some nagging stuff, and hopefully be back in the lineup sooner than later. But I just think that the combination of creativity, athleticism that Zach has brought out the front door, in addition to what he does at the back door, people forget, he was, an All-American attackman at Princeton, right? It's not like the guy doesn't know how to score, how to pass. I mean, he's a defense guy first and foremost in the NLL, but what he offers that team when they kind of dip into his full complement of skills and capabilities, I think we're really starting to see on display. So, weathering the storms is definitely a big thing, but that's something that I think is kind of to be expected with any team that's coached by Patrick Merrill. They're always going to be resilient. They're always going to battle. But finding that identity and finding those contributions from, I guess, unlikely places on offense where you don't expect the transition player of the year to be arguably your best offensive player for 2 straight weeks. But that's where they are, and that identity is working for them. So they'll get a really big test this week. Buffalo had to play a back-to-back last week. The San Diego Seals were basically waiting for the Bandits in their own beds. They're sitting in Buffalo watching the Bandits play up in Toronto. So I think that there is definitely a rebalancing of power in this upcoming week's matchup. But, it doesn't take away from the fact that a Seals team with an identity is vastly more dangerous than a Seals team without an identity. And if the last 2 weeks have shown us anything, it's that identity is developing. I think they really need another good week to reinforce it. Whether they win or lose, I don't want to say is irrelevant, but how the game plays out and what it looks like is a lot more important at this stage than making sure they get another win at this point. If you look at their schedule down the stretch, I mean, there are a lot of wins that are waiting to happen. They still play Albany twice. They play Vegas again. And I know Vegas is never necessarily an easy game for the Seals. There's just an unfavorable matchup there. But, when you look at the standings and the scheduling, 5 and 6 losing to Buffalo in the second half of a back-to-back with what they have coming up ahead, you still have to feel pretty good about it if they play well and that identity keeps building on itself.
Yeah, Vancouver is mixing there too. It's funny I'll get to the Albany thing because you had a great quote later on, but that is interesting you mentioned Albany to finish the season. Last time we had you on the show, we talked about kind of a shaky start to Chris Riglieri's season. I feel like in the overtime game, like in the overtime against Buffalo, he was, for 6 minutes, I mean, I summed it up to Buffalo playing hero ball maybe, but he still had to shut the door on some great goal scorers. How impressive was that to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I give him even more credit than you on that one. I don't know how much hero ball. I mean, there's definitely a flavor of it from Buffalo at times. But I thought he was just great. I thought he was really good. And that's the thing that's been thematic throughout his young career. He's really good in pressure situations. The lousy goals that he gives up usually come early. They come the first, second quarter, maybe quick out of halftime. He doesn't give up soft goals when it matters. And, that's something that I know that they value in him because, never won a Minto Cup, but he's a winner. And that's a kid that is going to always be locked in and at his most focused in those moments, which is something that you need because the alternative to that is being unfocused and scatterbrained and concerned with situations. So, I think that there's still room for him to keep improving. His numbers don't really pop off the page, but they don't kind of need to. That team doesn't give up a lot of shots. So with the defense in front of him, he's done enough to win the last couple of weeks. I think they'd like to get a little bit more out of him, but I think they also have a lot of trust and faith in him. Remember, they gambled on him when he was 20 years old. They're as chips in as it gets on Chris Riglieri, and he's rewarded them to this point at every time they've needed him to reward them. So, I'd look for him to play well at home against Buffalo. He might not. To be perfectly honest with you, I don't know. He's a goalie. Goalies are weird. They're like pitchers in baseball. You can't talk to them the day of a game. Sometimes they have their stuff. Sometimes they don't. But I think that there's a real possibility that down the second half of the season, him getting back to the level that he played at the tail end of last year is going to be like a trade acquisition without having to lose any assets, where you pick something up that wasn't there before just by virtue of being patient. So I think that all of the patience with him is warranted. I think that what people don't understand about him, because he's not a big talker, he doesn't do a lot of media, unless you're around him immediately in his orbit, you'd never really understand the level to which that kid is confident. I mean, his confidence is so significant that it's the first thing you notice about him when you talk to him in like an off-camera one-on-one setting. And if you didn't know any better, you might even think it's arrogance. But given his background, who he is and where he comes from, that's obviously not true. But he's so profoundly confident in himself, in his work ethic, in his preparation, that I think that really reinforces the need for patience and the need to trust him, because, the goaltending is such a mental position. And, the numbers statistically are he's stopping 66 or 76% of shots. That's not bad. It's not fantastic.
Right.
But between the ears, he's playing as well as anybody in the NLL right now. And that's going to start showing up in the stat sheet. And I think it has in some big moments, like it did against Buffalo last weekend and Toronto the week before. But I think that people are going to be reminded very quickly in the next couple of weeks that he's one of the best goalies in the NLL and not just a young rising star. He's already there. And I think that that's going to be a product of just how thoroughly unshakable his confidence is. People like to nitpick about body language and things like that when guys give up a goal or a pitcher gives up a home run. Don't do that with him. Whatever he shows you with his body language isn't what's going on in his head. He's just frustrated that it happened. It doesn't mean that he thinks that it's going to happen again. He thinks it's never going to happen again, and he genuinely believes that. So I think that they've gambled on the right horse in that situation. And I think he's an awesome kid and an awesome player, and he's really, really fun to watch. So get excited the next couple of weeks.
We're couch therapists and quarterbacks, man. Give us a break now. So last thing I want to touch on the Buffalo game is, now the Seals have kind of cracked the code on this Bandits team. In your eyes, what did the Seals show the NLL, if anything, on how to beat the Bandits? Did they show anything?
If anyone showed something, I think it's The Rock the night before.
Oh.
I think that ultimately what it comes down to is there's not a blueprint to beat Buffalo. Not every team can beat Buffalo. Vegas is not going to beat Buffalo. They could. It's the NLL. Things happen all the time. But there's a reason why Buffalo had a plus 39 goal differential their first 6 games. They're better than everybody. And that's still true. They're still a better team. There's a reason why we had them number 1 in the power rankings even after the loss. Yeah, their record's better mathematically than Saskatchewan's, but they're the best team in the league. And that isn't changing right now. Matt Spanger going down for the season definitely is a eyebrow raiser. But as far as blueprints to beating Buffalo goes, it's as simple as hoping that Dane Smith and Josh Byrne don't have super hot nights. I think the one thing San Diego may have illustrated that I think only a handful of teams can actually duplicate is that Buffalo isn't particularly young, so getting on and off the floor isn't going to be their strongest suit. And if you have a lot of speed and athleticism, it helps if you're San Diego and have a couple of guys in Zach Currier and Trent DeChico that are de facto two-way players. I mean, the Seals are kind of playing positionless lacrosse in the same way that like the Golden State Warriors played small ball. They're saying, everyone's so dialed in to get on, get off. We're just going to stay on and run and see if we can make you make a mistake in the process. And they did a handful of times. So if there's anything that would resemble a blueprint, it's speed is something that Buffalo will have to work to keep up with. Doesn't mean that they can't. It means that it's just not going to come easily. Not every team has speed. Not every team has youthful athleticism. Not every team has Matt Wright and Trent DeChico and Zach Currier and guys that can force the ball down the floor and basically beat you before you can get back on defense. So I think that if there's any weak spot that we've learned about for Buffalo, it's that an athletic and fast team may have some opportunities to exploit them in transition. But I think that word may is doing a lot of heavy lifting. It doesn't mean that's going to happen, and it doesn't mean that it can happen every week. But it did. I think it did show that, like every team in the NLL, the Bandits do have vulnerabilities. And none of them had really been on display until this past weekend against Toronto and San Diego. But if you were going to look for a starting point in how to attack Buffalo, that has to be it. Hope that you have the speed to do it. Hope that you have the skill out the back door to do it. And if you don't, you're probably going to lose, and you're probably going to lose by a lot. But if you do, then there's some opportunities. And, Saskatchewan has that, right? We'll see that matchup in a couple of weeks on March 1st. It'll be interesting to see how Derek Keenan and Jimmy Quinlan attack Buffalo, given what they have out the back door. Toronto has those guys. San Diego has those guys. There aren't a lot of teams, though, that have the guys out the back door that can do that. I think Halifax is a team that's actually really interesting, that has some pieces that could probably exploit some of that. You think about Jake Withers and Ryan Tarafenko. But Buffalo's only going to lose games when they get beat in transition and when their best players are not at their best. It's kind of like when you're getting old, you can't not exercise and eat like garbage. You can pick one but can't do both. If you're playing the Bandits, like, they can't both be slow in transition and have their stars not be at star level. If they do one or the other, they're probably going to win. And they're probably going to beat anybody that's in front of them, unless they have an injury bug that shows up late in the season, which obviously physical sport, totally possible. But as far as the blueprint goes, I think it all circles around, do you have the speed to put pressure on Buffalo, recognizing that they're not a super young team and speed isn't their strength. They're a skill IQ team, but there are very few teams that really have the guys in place that I think can execute that game plan for a full 60 minutes at a level that's going to force enough Buffalo mistakes to make up for whatever the Bandits are doing on the other end of the floor, or what the Bandits are doing in settled 5-on-5 defense with Matt Vince between the pipes. There are a lot of things that have to go right for an opponent to beat Buffalo. We saw it happen twice this weekend. Toronto still wasn't able to win. San Diego was, and frankly shouldn't have won, right? I mean, if you look at how that game came down to the wire, the Wesley Berg goal is disallowed. My thoughts on that, you didn't ask, but that is a terrible rule. The crease rule is a terrible rule. It makes sense, and that was the correct application and call of it, to wipe that goal away after Dylan Watson touched the ball. But there needs to be some kind of there needs to be a look into that call as to whether a player elected to go through the crease or was forced into the crease, in the same way that in football, we're not calling a receiver for illegal touching if he shoved it out of bounds. He's still eligible to catch the football. If he goes out by his own accord unforced, that rule applies. I'd like to see a little bit more nuance in that rule from the NLL, because if you watch that replay, Dylan Watson had no intention and no interest in going in the crease. He was pushed into the crease and did touch the ball first. So by rule, no goal. 100% correct call. Bad rule, though. I think they need to change that.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I was watching with some friends and we kind of did question that. Like, that's kind of unfair to the Seals. They did overcome it, but could have affected them a lot differently than what it did.
It felt like a lacrosse gods don't lie situation, right? Where the goal gets wiped away and it gets put back on the board 5 seconds remaining in regulation. Yeah, I mean, not to take away from the shot Zach Courier made, but those things have a way of balancing themselves out, and it felt like there was justice. And that's not coming from someone that works a lot with the Seals. Just as a fan of sports, it's never fun to see a game end because a goal that was really great was disallowed on a technicality that arguably shouldn't exist. But, that's neither here nor there. That rule's not changing tomorrow or the next day or next week. So it's not relevant right now. But that was just my first thought when I saw that happen. That, great officiating, but we should change that.
Yeah, especially I feel like I had kind of forgotten it had happened, because the way he kind of batted the ball, it was this happened like 30 seconds ago. What are we doing? A good point by you, though. All right, so I got to ask you, since you are the co-host of NLL Box Out, and you had a great line. You said Glenn Clark made a deal with the devil, and it ended when the Bandits the clock struck 0 in the Bandits game. How do you explain Albany this season? Because it is baffling. I can't stop talking about it.
Yeah, I don't really have a great explanation for it other than the NLL is brutal. Young players can be fickle in that sometimes they're fantastic and sometimes they don't have all the pieces together at the same times. The other possibility is that it wasn't Glenn Clark that brokered a deal with the devil, but maybe Sean Williams did when Glenn Clark drafted his son instead of making a trade to let Dyson be a desert dog. Perhaps that's an ongoing deal with the devil. We'll have to wait and see on that one. But, it's hard to explain. You're only as good as your goaltender, and Doug Jamieson hasn't been as good as he's been in other seasons. But I don't know, man. I got to be honest with you. I don't have an explanation for that. I keep seeing the losses pile up, and I keep being surprised. I guess less surprised the more it happens, but I keep struggling to understand how we're at this point. I could see them being a top 5 team again next year and just flipping it on its head. They're as good of a team on paper, if not better, than they were a year ago. And those young guys are only going to keep getting better. So, it's a really frustrating bump in the road for Albany fans, especially after you build all that momentum and, starting to get more fans in the building. This is not the product that they want to be putting on display with all that momentum immediately in the rearview mirror. It feels like a 1 step forward, 3 steps back kind of situation. But Glenn Clark is one of the best lacrosse coaches in the world. I mean, he led Team Canada to a gold medal, and I think that if there's anyone who can get the most out of that group, it's him. I think the best scenario we could see is a similar thing to Vancouver last year, where they figure it out just a little bit too late and don't end up making the playoffs, but really make a run. I think that's what we need to hope for, because that's good for the league. It's good for the sport. It's good for us as fans. But as far as explanation goes, there's a reason I said someone brokered a deal with the devil, because this doesn't add up. None of it does.
I loved it. Cooper, we appreciate you. And the fans got to know, are we getting a second episode this week on NLL Bucks, or that's not?
Yeah. So going forward, 2 episodes every week.
Yes.
The 1 episode week 1 was a function of a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, similar to why the video version of the podcast dropped a little bit later than the audio stuff. That stuff should be a little bit more in line. Just keep in mind that upload times are not the same for everything, so it might show up somewhere before it does somewhere else. There's not like a universal one button, here it goes. So just be patient with it. We're looking at, early in the week and late in the week. I don't know if it's been nailed down 100% yet between Tuesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday. But, just keep your eyes open. There will be 2 episodes every week going forward. And we'll same format. We'll talk about the week that was in the early episode, talk about the week that's coming in the late episode. The second episode of the week will probably be a little bit shorter, because the interviews are going in the first episode. We're not doing a second interview every week. It's a lot to ask of the guys in the league, so we try and be respectful of their time, especially given Thursday, Fridays are travel days for them. So that's a big ask. So we want to be respectful of that. But 2 episodes coming up. Second one coming up later this week. So keep your eyes on the podcast apps and the YouTube, and that'll be out for you.
And is it you and Nick this week again on the broadcast for the Sealed Minutes?
It is not. It is myself and Jake Elliott. Yeah, no Nick. He's got other engagements. Nick has a real big boy job that requires his time sometimes. So he's not going to be with us. But Jake's awesome, and we called the game earlier this year. That was a lot of fun. So I think people should be excited to tune in, not just for great lacrosse, but Jake and I get along really well. It'll be a lot of fun. And Haley between the benches. Haley's been awesome, continues to be awesome, and she's got great stuff planned for this week. So hopefully should be a really entertaining show.
We'll have a call and have a great second episode this week, and keep on doing what you do. Thank you, Cooper, for coming on the show again, man.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. Thank you, buddy.
At Cooper Perkins TV on Twitter /X, and at World of Coop on Instagram. And there you go, the Believe in USC host, NLL Box Out host, San Diego Seals play-by-play, lots of different hats, but we know him affectionately as Cooper Perkins. When we come back to this awesome show, let's talk about my power rankings. We're going to wrap it up next. You don't want to miss this.
Don't go anywhere. Daily Dive will be right back.
You need tickets to that next event? We've got them. That's right, tickets.12ozsports.com. Get you to any sporting event, concert, theater event that you can think of. And the promo code 12OZ or ROME gets you an additional discount. Don't feed the massive ticket corporate machine. Go to tickets.12ozsports.com and enjoy the show. America, get back on track with Dust Pod's Performance Stabilizer. When applied to roadways, it kills dust and strengthens the integrity of the road. Easily applied by mixing with water. Dust Pods is the future. And polymer stabilization. Call 1-833-DUST-PODS or visit dustpods.com today.
Daily Dive is back in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
When today's awesome show ends and you are getting your tickets to the next game, be sure to buy your tickets for less at tickets.12onsports.com. That's tickets.numbers12lettersOZsports.com. You will not regret seeing things live knowing, these tickets were a great price. Now I can buy whatever I want from the team store or concession stand, if that's so. Also, reminder to go to 12onsports.com/cancer to donate and support the cause that Kai the goalie came on this show and talked about yesterday. I highly encourage you to watch that. I'm also going to chop it up into its own little segment on the 12 on Sports YouTube channel. So we appreciate you guys for tuning into that. And of course, again, donating a ticket at 12ouncesports.com/cancer. All right, it's now time to get to my NLL Power Rankings. Halifax and Calgary fans, read it and enjoy it. First off, of course, I do still have the Buffalo Bandits. Buffalo, I can talk all I want about how they showed a chink in the armor. They're still Buffalo. They're still the Bandits. They still play at KeyBank Center. Dane and Josh are awesome. Matt Vince is a legend. So is Bo Vince, by the way. Shout out Fresh Fits. But yeah, Bandits are amazing. Oh, and Coach Johnny T, what are we talking about? Number 2, Saskatchewan Rush are staying put. After a 2-0 weekend, they did make it tough on your boy. But nonetheless, great weekend for them. They still are holding strong. Still got Mammoth at number 3. Colorado is really good. Seals have jumped to 4. Again, I'll say it on NLL Box Out with Mackey and Coop. Wesley Berg brought to at least my attention that they had been using a bunch of different lineups for these last few games, and now it's been all coming together now. They're figured things out possibly. Seals, if they beat Buffalo next, like this coming weekend, oh my Lord, the floodgates are open for the rest of the league. Number 5, the Black Bears. What an offensive clinic for Jeff Teat and the Teat translator, Riley O'Connor. Wow, the Black Bears went to Albany and smacked them around. Wings fall to number 6. Getting swept by the Thunderbirds, not good for me. Wings I'm kind of selling my stock on them a little bit. Roughnecks have climbed to 7th. They went 1-1. I thought the Rush controlled the first game, but Roughnecks still hung around, and then they beat the doors off. The Desert Dogs, which is what you're supposed to do in that game in Calgary. Warriors up to number 8 after beating the Dogs 12-8, but it wasn't as good as what Calgary did. Rock fall to 9. I still like the goalie. Same thing with Brett Dobson, the Georgia Swarm, even though he's not as productive as he could be right now. Thunderbirds, I'm still not sold on Warren Hill. It goes for Cam McLeod, Calgary as well, but those 7 through 11 are interchangeable right now. Maybe even 6. I mean, they're like Mackey and Coop said. The first 2 and the bottom 2 and then everyone in between, have at it, have what you will. Rochester 12, 13, Albany. And if it wasn't for Las Vegas existing, Albany would be 14, but the Dogs do exist. Tommy Burke, like I said on yesterday's show, got released. And Tyrell Hammer-Jackson is now on the team. So that's a little interesting thing. He's been tearing it up in the middle league he's been playing, and so we'll see how that works out. Reminder to head to our shop by going to dailydivelacks.creator-spring.com to support this show. Also, check us out on social media, Daily Dive LAX, where you can find the link to our shop in our social media bios and other great reels and graphics, etc. Reminder, folks, thank you again for watching the show, for interacting like you do, as always, on social media or live. Reminder, you are the bread, you're the butter, you are the... to my Wesley Berg interview. He was tired. He was probably in San Diego. They woke him up. He did come alive in the end of that interview, which if you know, you know. But yeah, thanks for coming on and watching this show. For all of our guests like Cooper Perkins today, like those to come and those before him, and Adam and Pat every Friday, thank you all for sharing your audience and platform with us, giving us validity and relevance. For everyone behind the scenes that makes this thing work, I'm your host, Michael Carvel, saying have a great rest of your day. See you tomorrow, same time, same place, 12 on Sports. This has been Daily Dive. Bye.
Thanks for watching Daily Dive. See you next time.